And here is a file that I've already saved, and all I've done so far is to create my system information. And I'll show you what I've done there already by clicking on the Edit System Information button. Here I've given my project its title, database name and the location where it's saved. Once again, I've used a standard pure Eurocode here, and for today's system I've chosen a 2D slab system. What's very important to note when you select your system is the orientation of the dead load, and this is relative to the global coordinate system, and you'll be able to see this in the small preview window here. So here you can see my global Z direction is pointing upwards, so my orientation of dead load is therefore in the negative direction, downwards. This will vary according to which coordinate system you've chosen, so do make sure you know which coordinate system you're working in. I'm just going to give you a very quick preview of the Load Case Manager dialog box. You don't need to do too much of that to start with. As you can see, there are two tabs within the Load Case Manager. There's Load Cases and Actions. There's nothing in the Load Cases box at the moment. And if I change to the Actions tab, then with the creation of my system, it's automatically given me a dead load and a variable load action. So the first thing I'm going to do is just draw some geometry very quickly. I'm going to draw myself some squares, specify my first point at 0, 0, and then my second point to make a 3-meter square box. And then all I'm going to do is use the copy command to copy that a few times. And here I have some geometry for my areas. Bear with me a second. There we go. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is to create some structural areas. I'm going to do that by clicking on the Structural Element tab in the SOFiPLUS sidebar. And then I'm going to use the Create Structural Areas tool. I'm just going to use the default settings in that for now. And right-click on my drawing and select Point in Area. And I'm going to select in my first area here. All I'm going to do is to use the presets in here, my Load Case 1 for my dead load or permanent load, and Load Case 2 for my imposed load. And I'm going to specify a dead load of 1, so for example a partition load, and in my live load I'm going to specify 3. Because I want to create these areas very quickly, I'm going to click on the Show Dialog Once Only option and click OK. And then I can simply click into my remaining areas to create those without the load dialog box appearing again. Okay, so as you'll see here, we started to create some loads, and they are currently displayed as text along with the area information. There are alternate ways to view those loads, and I'll show you how to do that now. If you go onto the Tools tab in the sidebar, here there is an option for visualization. And if you open that, here there are a number of options for changing the ways that your file is displayed. Now the sections that I'm interested in at the moment are, first of all, the text size. Here you can change that. I can increase the size of the text very slightly. So if I select 0.25, instead, and if you watch the text of the loads on the area, you'll see that you can make that any size you wish. I'm going to leave that as it is for now. And the option I'm going to choose this time is to untick the Show Loads as Text option. And that's reflected straight away so that you can see a preview. And here you can see that the representation of the loads has completely changed. So I'm going to click OK on that and then choose an isometric view so that you can see how those are displayed. And here you can see that I have my loads displayed relative to each other in a scale. You'll note that there is what appears to be an extra line here in your load. However, that's not a fault. If I go back to the visualization tool, in here there is another display option for the hatch size, and it is in fact part of the hatch. Because it's so large you can only see one line of it. In here you can play around with the size of the hatch. I'm just going to make that much smaller, and then you can see which of the loads are applied to which area. So I'll leave that as that setting. You'll see here that the loads are displayed one on top of each other. They're both currently named as PG. Now the G has nothing to do with whether it's a dead load or a live load. That is in fact to describe the direction of the load, which is in the gravity direction. In order to change the values of these loads, I'm going to use the Modify Structural Area tool in the Structural Elements tab. And I select my tool, and then I'm just going to choose one of my structural areas and right click to accept. And here it's flashed up with an information message. And it says that the loads created with the structural area default loads dialog can be edited with the button Edit Structural Area Default Loads on the Loads tab. So we'll go and do that now. In the Loads tab, as you'll see in the main window here, there are no loads for display, and that's because they are stored in this separate section. If I click on there, then you will see we have the same dialog window as when we first specified the load. So in here I can either change the live load value or I can change the load case. In this case I'm just going to change the value to 5. Click OK and then OK again, and you can see here the load represented has been shown slightly different because it's scaled. You can modify the loads on multiple areas by clicking on the Modify Structural Areas tool once again, and you can select 2 areas and right click to accept. It's the same message again. And here I can go to the Edit Structural Area Default Loads again. Here you can see that I have the same dead load on each area. However, while the load value on the 2 areas is the same, the load case is different for each area, so therefore it's displayed as varies. So you can change a value here, for example to 2, and then if I'd like to change all of those areas selected to the same load case, then I can click on the small button next to with 3 dots, and then I can go into the Load Cases tab, and here I can select whichever load case I'd like those to belong to. So I'm going to select load case number 2 and click OK to that, and OK again, and then my loads have been modified. If I choose to modify the loads on 2 areas, again with different load cases and different load values, then you'll see that the varies appears in both both boxes. I'm going to leave those for now. Okay, so let's open up the Load Case Manager again and have a look at the options available in here. So a basic overview, the basic things to note are the two tabs, the Load Cases tab and the Actions tab. Here at the bottom you can see the description of the design code you've chosen when you first create your file. Here is the Increment Load Cases Automatically option that you can also choose in the Default Area Loads dialog box. And at the bottom here, the top here, there is a button to create a new load case, or in the case of actions, a new action. Okay, so now let's talk about the self-weight of the structure. Unless you've calculated the self-weight of your structure and you've applied that as a separate load onto your area, here you can choose the option for the program to calculate the self-weight of the structure itself. Now under the self-weight factor tab column here, in the dead load you can double click on this section, and if you replace that with 1, then it will take a factor of 1 for the dead load of the structure and apply that directly. It's usually recommended to separate your self-weight load case from your dead load load case, and that allows you to break down your results to see a clearer picture. Further options for changing the way that self-weight is calculated are done using the Use Global Dead Load Directions option at the bottom, and that will allow you to specify an alternate self-weight direction if you have chosen that in your system information box. However, in most cases you won't need to use that. Here are my existing load cases. As I created my areas, my load case number 1 was my dead load, and then because I had the Increment Automatically option selected, it assigned a load case number 2 for the live load here, a live load 3 and a live load 4. So now I have my 4 load cases. Each has a description which you can modify by double clicking on. They are each assigned an action, and if you click on the action here, it turns into a drop-down box, and in here you can specify any of the actions that you have specified in the Actions tab. Now these were the 2 that were created automatically. You can use the New tab to create a new action for any number of things, and I'll show you how to do that in just a couple of moments. First I'd like to finish off explaining the rest of the columns in here. You'll be familiar with the factors of safety here, the gamma U, gamma F and gamma A factors for unfavourable safety factor, favourable safety factor and accidental, and the same with the C values here. And these are the combination factors for standard, frequent, quasi-permanent and non-frequent. And you can find a further explanation for these in the SOFiLoad manual. All of the manuals are in PDF format, and you can find those in the installation directory for the software. Here I've already opened the SOFiLoad PDF, and if I go down to the table of contents, I'm just going to click on the Act section, and that takes me directly to the description for the safety factors and the combination factors. Next I'm going to go to back to the Actions tab. Here I have an action letter that's assigned